The notification pinged at 6:47 a.m. Maya Rodriguez wiped her hands on the dish towel hanging from her jeans pocket and glanced at her phone. Another ride request. The address showed downtown Seattle, one of those glass towers that pierced the morning fog like steel needles. She'd been driving since 4 in the morning, chasing surge pricing and early airport runs, trying to make rent before the 15th. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Her Honda Civic sat in the apartment complex parking lot, engine ticking softly as it cooled from the previous ride. The backseat still smelled faintly of coffee and expensive cologne from the investment banker she'd dropped off at Pike Place Market. Maya climbed behind the wheel, adjusted her rearview mirror, and started the engine. The radio crackled to life, playing something soft and forgettable. She turned it down and pulled onto the empty street. Seattle at dawn was a different city. Entirely. The usual traffic hadn't begun its daily stranglehold on the highways. Street cleaners moved like slow-motion dancers between parked cars. Coffee shops flickered on their neon signs, preparing for the morning rush that would arrive in waves. Maya had learned to love these quiet hours when the city belonged to night shift workers, insomniacs, and people like her who needed every dollar they could scrape together. She pulled up to the Meridian Tower, a 38-story monument to steel and ambition. The lobby glowed amber through floor-to-ceiling windows. A doorman in a pressed uniform stood behind glass doors, checking his watch. Maya double-checked the pickup location on her app. Penthouse level. She'd driven plenty of wealthy passengers before, but something about penthouse pickups always made her stomach tighten slightly. The elevator in the parking garage was lined with mirrors and smelled like expensive cleaning products. Maya watched the numbers climb. 28, 29, 30. Her reflection stared back at her from 3 different angles. Hair pulled into a messy ponytail, faded Mariners t-shirt, jeans with a small tear near the left knee. She looked tired because she was tired. 3 jobs would do that to anyone. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. Thick carpet, abstract paintings, air that somehow tasted cleaner than what she breathed. At street level. Maya found the penthouse door and knocked twice. The man who answered surprised her. She'd expected someone older, maybe gray-haired and stern-faced. Instead, Marcus Wellington looked to be in his early 30s, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 2 months. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw clean-shaven, his watch the kind that told time in 3 different countries. But his eyes held something she hadn't expected. A weariness that expensive clothes couldn't hide. "You're my driver?" he asked, checking his phone. Maya Rodriguez, Uber. She held up her phone showing the ride details. "Going to Bellevue?" He nodded and grabbed a leather briefcase from somewhere behind the door. "St. Catherine's Chapel." "Do you know it? I'll find it." Maya had driven to dozens of wedding venues over the years. Saturday mornings were usually good for tips, especially if the passengers were in celebratory moods. They walked to the elevator in silence. Marcus stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the descending numbers. Maya noticed. He kept checking his watch, not in an impatient way, but like someone counting down to something he wasn't looking forward to. The parking garage felt cooler than the hallway above. Maya's Honda looked particularly humble next to the row of luxury cars parked in assigned spaces. A silver Porsche, a black BMW, something Italian and low-slung that she couldn't identify. Marcus didn't seem to notice or care. He slid into the passenger seat without comment. "Beautiful morning," Maya offered as she started the engine. "Is it?" Marcus looked out the window at the Seattle skyline. The Space Needle rose in the distance, surrounded by cranes and construction projects. "I hadn't noticed." Maya pulled out of the garage and onto the street. Traffic was beginning to thicken, but they had time. The GPS estimated 43 minutes to Bellevue, depending on bridge delays. She glanced at her passenger in the rearview mirror. He sat perfectly straight, briefcase balanced on his knees, eyes focused on something beyond the window. Big day? She asked. Marcus turned slightly. You could say that. Wedding? Maya had learned to read the signs. Saturday morning, formal. Attire, church destination. Either a wedding or a funeral, and his suit was too light for morning. My cousin's. His voice carried no enthusiasm. Jessica Wellington. She's marrying some guy named David Park. Tech entrepreneur, I think. Maya smiled. Seattle's full of those. You close with your cousin? Marcus considered the question longer than it should have taken. We were, once. The conversation died there. Maya had driven enough strangers to recognize when someone wanted silence. She focused on the road, weaving between early morning commuters and weekend shoppers. The city gave way to suburbs, strip malls, residential neighborhoods where houses had actual yards and driveways. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and put it away without responding. This happened 3 more times during the drive. Each time, his jaw tightened slightly. Popular guy, Maya observed. Persistent family, he corrected. They have opinions about punctuality. And you don't? I have opinions about a lot of things. Punctuality isn't high on the list. Maya caught something in his tone, a bitterness that seemed disproportionate to wedding attendance. She'd heard similar notes from passengers heading to court dates, job interviews they didn't want, family obligations that felt more like punishments. They reached the Bellevue exit. St. Catherine's Chapel sat on a tree-lined street, surrounded by parking lots that were already half full. It was the kind of church that looked expensive even from the outside. Stone facade, stained glass windows, carefully maintained landscaping. Wedding venues for people who had choices. Maya pulled up to the main entrance. Here we are. Marcus didn't move immediately. He sat staring at the chapel doors, where people in formal attire were beginning to arrive. A woman in a navy dress struggled with 2 small children. An elderly man in a wheelchair was being helped up the ramp by someone who looked like his son. You okay? Maya asked. Marcus blinked. Fine. He reached for his wallet. What do I owe you? $32.50. He handed her 2 20s. Keep the change. Maya looked at the bills. $7.50 wasn't a bad tip, but it wasn't exceptional either. Thanks. Marcus opened the door, but didn't get out. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever feel like you're exactly where you're supposed to be, but you have no idea how you got there? Maya considered the question. It was deeper than most passengers' small talk. Sometimes, usually when I'm driving, actually. Like the road knows something I don't. Interesting. Marcus stepped out of the car, then leaned down to the window. Thanks for the ride, Maya Rodriguez. Good luck with the wedding. He smiled. For the first time during the drive. It transformed his face completely, made him look younger and less burdened. I have a feeling I'll need it. Maya watched him walk toward the chapel entrance. His posture changed as he got closer to the building, becoming more rigid, more defensive. By the time he reached the doors, he looked like someone preparing for battle rather than celebration. She was about to drive away when her phone buzzed with another ride request. The pickup location was less than 2 miles away at a small apartment complex. Maya accepted the ride and pulled out of the chapel parking lot. As she drove, she found herself thinking about Marcus Wellington and his expensive weariness. There had been something familiar about him, though she couldn't place what. The apartment complex was nothing like the Meridian Tower. 2-story buildings arranged around a courtyard, laundry hanging from balconies, children's toys scattered on patchy grass. Maya pulled up to Building C and checked her phone. The passenger was listed as Sarah. A young woman emerged from a ground-floor apartment, struggling with a garment bag, a small suitcase, and what looked like a box of flowers. She had long dark hair, olive skin, and the kind of harried expression Maya recognized from her own mirror on busy mornings. "Sarah," Maya called through the window. "Yes, thank you so much for coming." Sarah managed to juggle everything without dropping anything, though it looked precarious. "I'm so sorry, I have a lot of stuff." "No problem." Maya popped the trunk and got out to help. "Wedding?" Sarah's face lit up. "My sister's. I'm the maid of honor, and I'm running incredibly late. The hairstylist had an emergency, and then my dress needed last-minute alterations, and—" she paused to breathe. "Sorry, I'm rambling. I do that when I'm nervous. Where are we headed?" "St. Catherine's Chapel in Bellevue. Do you know it?" Maya felt a strange little jolt of recognition. "I was just there. Dropped someone off about 20 minutes ago." "Really?" Small world. Sarah settled into the back seat, still clutching the flower box. "Was it someone from David's side?" "I don't know most of his family yet." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Tall guy, dark hair, expensive suit. Said his name was Marcus Wellington. Sarah went very still. "Marcus Wellington?" "Yeah," said he was the groom's cousin. "Well, his cousin Jessica was getting married." Maya glanced in the rearview mirror. Sarah's expression had changed completely, from nervous excitement to something that looked like shock. "Jessica Wellington is my sister," Sarah said quietly. "And Marcus isn't David's cousin, he's hers." Maya felt puzzle pieces clicking together in her mind. "Your sister is Jessica Wellington? Jessica Park now, I suppose." She kept her maiden name professionally, but ... double quote Sarah trailed off. "Wait, you said Marcus was there? At the church?" "Dropped him off myself. He seemed reluctant about the whole thing." Sarah made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "He came. I can't believe he actually came." "I take it there's history there. You could say that." Sarah stared out the window at the passing suburbs. Marcus and Jessica were inseparable growing up, more like siblings than cousins. When their parents divorced, when Jessica's dad lost his business, when everything fell apart, Marcus was always there. Maya drove carefully, sensing this was information she needed to handle delicately. "What happened?" "Money," Sarah said simply. "It changes everything, doesn't it?" Marcus inherited his grandfather's investment firm when he turned 25. Became incredibly wealthy overnight. Jessica was still struggling, working 3 jobs to pay for community college. That must have been hard. Marcus tried to help. Offered to pay for Jessica's school, set her up in a better apartment, all of it. But Jessica has this pride, you know. She refused everything. Said she didn't want to owe anyone, even family. Maya understood pride. She'd turned down help plenty of times, preferring to struggle alone rather than feel indebted. And that caused problems, the worst kind. They fought about it constantly. Marcus thought Jessica was being stubborn. Jessica thought Marcus was being condescending. Eventually, they stopped talking altogether. How long ago was that? 3 years. Jessica met David about 2 years ago. He's successful, but he earned it himself, built his company from nothing. Jessica felt comfortable with that, I think. She could be an equal partner instead of someone being rescued. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing the information. And Marcus wasn't invited to the wedding? Jessica sent him an invitation. More out of obligation than hope, I think. None of us expected him to show up. They were approaching the chapel again. Maya could see the parking lot was much fuller now, cars overflowing into the street. "Ah, you nervous about seeing him?" Sarah laughed, but it sounded shaky. Terrified. Marcus and I used to be close too. He was like the big brother I never had. When he and Jessica stopped talking, I lost him too. Maya pulled up to the chapel entrance. Well, looks like today might be full of surprises. Sarah gathered her belongings but didn't get out immediately. You know what's funny? Jessica's been having doubts about the wedding all week. Not about David, she loves him, but about doing it without Marcus there. They may not be speaking, but he's still family. Maybe his showing up is exactly what she needs. Or maybe it'll be a disaster. Sarah smiled ruefully. Guess there's only one way to find out. She handed Maya $30 for a $26 fare. Thank you. And thanks for listening. I needed to talk that through with someone who wasn't involved. Good luck there. Sarah paused at the car door. You know, I have a feeling this is going to be a day no one forgets. Maya watched her hurry toward the chapel, garment bag flowing behind her like a banner. Through the open doors, she could see glimpses of white flowers, elegant decorations, people in their finest clothes. Somewhere inside, Marcus Wellington was probably sitting alone, wondering if he'd made the right choice in coming, and somewhere else, Jessica Wellington was preparing to marry the love of her life, unaware that the cousin she'd lost 3 years ago had just walked back into her world. Maya sat in her car for a moment longer, struck by the strange symmetry of it all. In 30 minutes, she'd transported 2 people who had been searching for each other without knowing it. Family members separated by pride and misunderstanding, brought together by nothing more complicated than wedding invitations and Uber ride requests. Her phone buzzed with another pickup request. Maya glanced at the chapel one more time, then pulled away from the curb. She had more rides to complete, more stories to collect, more connections to facilitate without realizing it. But something told her that the story she'd just witnessed was far from over. Inside St. Catherine's Chapel, Marcus Wellington stood at the back, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. The sanctuary buzzed with pre-ceremony energy. Guests filtered into wooden pews, their conversations creating a gentle hum that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting rainbow fragments across the stone floor. He recognized his Aunt Patricia immediately. She sat in the third row, wearing a navy suit and the same disapproving expression she'd worn at every family gathering for the past decade. His Uncle Robert was beside her, checking his phone despite being in church. The Wellington side of the family occupied the left section, a collection of successful professionals who measured worth in quarterly earnings and social connections. Marcus chose a seat in the very last row, hoping to remain unnoticed. The wooden pew felt cold through his suit jacket. Around him, other late arrivals settled into their places. A family with twin toddlers struggled to distribute quiet toys. An elderly woman fumbled with her purse, looking for reading glasses she'd probably left at home. The organ began playing softly, something classical that Marcus didn't recognize. He'd never paid much attention to church music, though Jessica used to hum hymns while she cooked. She'd learned them from their grandmother, the only person who'd managed to keep the family connected after the divorces and business failures that scattered them across the country. A side door opened near the altar. David Park emerged with his groomsmen, adjusting his tie nervously. Marcus studied the groom from afar. David looked younger than he'd expected, maybe 28 or 29, with kind eyes and an honest face. He wore his tuxedo well, though. He kept tugging at the cuffs like someone unaccustomed to formal wear. Marcus remembered meeting David once, briefly at a coffee shop downtown. Jessica had introduced them during one of their last attempts at reconciliation. David had been polite but protective, clearly aware of the tension between the cousins. He'd kept the conversation light, asked safe questions about Marcus's work, avoided anything that might spark an argument. The chapel continued filling. Marcus watched the guests, trying to identify which side they belonged to. David's family and friends seemed more relaxed, more genuinely happy. They laughed easily, hugged frequently, took selfies despite being in church. The Wellington contingent maintained their composure, speaking in hushed tones about appropriate topics. Then he saw her. Sarah Park hurried through the main entrance, still carrying her garment bag and looking slightly frazzled. She'd changed clothes since the Uber ride, now wearing an elegant burgundy dress that complemented her dark hair. She moved with purpose toward the front of the church, greeting relatives and friends along the way. Marcus felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Sarah had been 12 when he'd last seen her, all knobby knees and braces and passionate opinions about everything. She'd followed him and Jessica around like a devoted puppy, always wanting to be included in their adventures. He'd taught her to drive stick shift in the parking lot behind her high school. She'd been the first person he'd called when he got accepted to Harvard Business School. Now she was 22, poised and beautiful, moving through the crowd like she belonged. 3 years had transformed her from the awkward teenager he remembered into a confident young woman. The realization hit him harder than he'd expected. Time had moved forward without him, reshaping the people he'd once known intimately. Sarah disappeared through the same side door David had used, presumably to check on Jessica. Marcus wondered what his cousin looked like now, whether success had changed her as much as it had changed him. He'd seen photos on social media before blocking her accounts, but pictures never told the whole story. The organ music swelled, signaling the ceremony's approach. Guests settled into their seats, conversations fading to whispers. Marcus pulled out his phone to check the time, then remembered where he was and put it away. His hands felt awkward without something to hold. A movement caught his eye. An older woman in the row ahead turned to speak to her companion, revealing a profile that made Marcus's breath catch. It was Mrs. Chen, Jessica's high school English teacher. She'd been the one to encourage Jessica's writing, to help her apply for scholarships, to believe in possibilities when everyone else saw limitations. Mrs. Chen had also been the one to suggest that Marcus fund a scholarship program at their old high school. It seemed like a perfect way to help without making Jessica feel singled out. Anonymous donations that would benefit students like her, kids who had talent but lacked resources. Jessica had found out anyway, had accused him of trying to buy his way out of guilt. "You think money fixes everything," she'd said during their last argument. "Like you can just write a check and make everyone's problems disappear." "I'm trying to help," he replied. "No, you're trying to feel better about being lucky." The memory stung as sharply now as it had 3 years ago. Maybe she'd been right. Maybe his offers of help had been more about assuaging his own conscience than genuinely caring for her welfare. Success had come so easily to him, inherited rather than earned, that he'd never understood her need to struggle for things on her own terms. The side door opened again. This time, Sarah emerged leading a procession of bridesmaids. They moved in practiced formation, having obviously rehearsed their entrance. Each woman carried a small bouquet of white roses tied with burgundy ribbon. Their dresses were identical in color but different in style, allowing each woman's personality to show through. Sarah was the last bridesmaid before the maid of honor. She moved with quiet grace, her earlier nervousness replaced by focused calm. As she reached the front of the church, her eyes swept the congregation. For just a moment, her gaze lingered on the back row where Marcus sat. Their eyes met across the crowded sanctuary. Sarah's step faltered almost imperceptibly. A flash of recognition crossed her face, followed by something that might have been relief or worry or both. She recovered quickly, continuing to her designated position. But Marcus saw her lean over to whisper something to the bridesmaid beside her. The organ music changed, becoming more formal and processional. Everyone stood. Marcus rose with them, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was it. Jessica would appear any moment, walking down the aisle toward a future that didn't include him. The chapel doors at the back opened wider. A little girl appeared first, maybe 6 years old, scattering rose petals with serious concentration. She wore a white dress with a burgundy sash and tiny ballet flats that made soft sounds against the stone floor. Behind her came a boy about the same age, carrying rings on a small pillow, walking like someone who'd been warned repeatedly not to drop anything important. Then came the maid of honor, a woman Marcus didn't recognize. She was older than the other bridesmaids, maybe 35, wearing a dress that was slightly different from the others. Her bouquet was larger, more elaborate. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd been to many weddings before. Finally, the bride appeared. Jessica stood in the doorway, backlit by morning sunlight streaming through the open doors. Her dress was simple but elegant, fitted through the bodice and flowing into a modest train. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate style, held in place by what looked like their grandmother's pearl comb. She carried a bouquet of white peonies and garden roses that seemed to glow against her dress, but it was her face that stopped Marcus cold. Jessica was radiant in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or lighting. She practically vibrated with happiness, her smile so genuine and unguarded that it transformed her entire appearance. This wasn't the tired, defensive young woman he remembered from their last meeting. This was someone who had found exactly what she'd been looking for. She began walking down the aisle on the arm of her stepfather, a man Marcus had met only once at a tense family dinner years ago. Her eyes were fixed on David, who was watching her approach with an expression of pure adoration. The love between them was so obvious, so uncomplicated, that Marcus felt something shift in his chest as Jessica passed his row. She turned her head slightly, probably acknowledging guests in the back section. Her gaze swept past him, then snapped back. For a heartbeat that felt like an eternity, cousin stared at cousin across the space of 3 years and countless unspoken regrets. Jessica's step never faltered, but her eyes widened with shock. Her grip on her stepfather's arm tightened visibly. A dozen emotions flickered across her face too quickly to identify. Surprise, certainly, but also something that might have been gratitude or anger or hope. Then the moment passed. Jessica turned back toward the altar, toward David, toward her new beginning. But Marcus saw her lean over to whisper something to her stepfather, saw him glance back toward the last row with curiosity. The processional music ended. The officiant, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and graying hair, stepped forward to address the congregation. His voice carried easily through the sanctuary, warm and welcoming. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Jessica Marie Wellington and David Christopher Park in holy matrimony." Marcus settled back into his pew, knowing there was no escape now. He was committed to seeing this through, to witnessing Jessica's happiness, even if it highlighted his own isolation. Around him, guests shifted and smiled, pulled out phones to capture memories, dabbed at eyes with tissues they'd brought anticipating tears. He thought about the Uber driver, Maya Rodriguez, and her observation about roads knowing things people didn't. Maybe she'd been right. Maybe some invisible force had guided him here today, had made him choose this moment to stop running from the consequences of his pride. Or maybe he was just a man in expensive suit, sitting alone in the back of a church, watching the person he'd once loved most in the world promise herself to someone else. The ceremony continued around him, but Marcus found himself thinking about beginnings instead of endings, about the possibility that some bridges once burned could still be rebuilt, about the woman who'd driven him here without knowing she was delivering him to exactly where he needed to be. In the front row, Sarah caught his eye again and offered the smallest of smiles. It was enough to remind him that he wasn't entirely alone, that some connection survived even the deepest disappointments. Outside, Maya Rodriguez was probably driving another passenger, facilitating another unexpected encounter, weaving through Seattle traffic without realizing the story she'd set in motion was just beginning to unfold. The reception hall sparkled under crystal chandeliers, their light dancing across cream-colored linens and centerpieces of blush roses and eucalyptus. The Bellevue Country Club had transformed its ballroom into something magical, with strings of fairy lights wrapped around pillars and soft jazz flowing from hidden speakers. Guests mingled between cocktail hour and dinner, their laughter mixing. With the gentle clink of champagne glasses, Marcus stood near the bar, nursing a whiskey he'd barely touched. The ceremony had ended an hour ago with rice throwing and tearful hugs, but he still felt off balance from Jessica's reaction to seeing him. She'd managed to complete her vows without faltering, had kissed David with genuine joy, had walked back down the aisle glowing with happiness. But her eyes had found Marcus twice more during the service, each glance loaded with questions he couldn't answer from across a crowded church. Now, surrounded by celebrating strangers, he wondered what he was supposed to do next. The plan had been simple: attend the ceremony, slip out quietly, return to his controlled world where emotions stayed manageable. Instead, he found himself trapped between obligation and escape, unsure which direction would cause less damage. You clean up nice for someone who used to eat dirt sandwiches. Marcus turned to find Sarah standing beside him, holding a glass of white wine and wearing an expression he couldn't quite read. She'd changed from her bridesmaid dress into a shorter cocktail dress, though she still wore the same burgundy lipstick from the ceremony. "Sarah," he felt a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. "I never ate dirt sandwiches. You made me eat them, though. Said they were a delicacy in France." She took a sip of wine, studying his face. "You look good, Marcus. Older but good. You look incredible. When did you stop being 12? Sometime around when you stopped calling." The words carried no accusation, just fact. "I kept expecting you to show up for my high school graduation. Mom saved you a seat." Marcus felt the familiar weight of accumulated guilt. He'd sent a generous graduation gift through his assistant, something expensive and impersonal that probably sat unused in Sarah's room. "I should have been there." "Yes, you should have." Sarah moved closer to the bar, ordering another wine from the bartender. "But you're here now, and that's what matters." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the reception unfold around them. David's college friends dominated the dance floor, attempting moves that required more coordination than any of them possessed. Jessica's work colleagues clustered around small tables, deep in animated conversations about projects and deadlines that seemed absurd in such an elegant setting. "She's happy," Sarah said eventually. Marcus followed her gaze to where Jessica and David swayed together on the dance floor, lost in their own private world. "She deserves to be." "Do you mean that?" "Of course I mean it. Jessica deserves everything good that happens to her." Sarah turned to face him directly. "Then why did you make it so hard for her to accept good things from you?" The question hit harder than Marcus expected. He set down his whiskey, buying time to formulate an answer that wouldn't sound defensive. "I was trying to help." "No, you were trying to fix. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Help is offering someone a ride when their car breaks down. Fixing is buying them a new car without asking if they want one." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Jessica needed to know she could stand on her own feet before she could let anyone catch her if she fell. Marcus absorbed this, realizing it was the most insightful thing anyone had said to him about the situation. "When did you get so wise?" "College psychology classes. Plus 3 years of watching my sister struggle with whether to invite you today." Sarah glanced around the reception, then back at Marcus. "She wrote your invitation by hand, rewrote it 4 times. She didn't have to invite me at all. She did, though. Because despite everything that happened, you're still family. And Jessica believes family shows up for each other." Marcus watched his cousin spin slowly in David's arms, her face radiant with contentment. "I don't know how to fix this, Sarah. I don't even know if it can be fixed." "Maybe that's the problem right there." Not everything needs fixing. Sometimes things just need time and space to heal on their own. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Maya Rodriguez had walked into the reception hall, looking uncertain and slightly overwhelmed. She wore a simple black dress that was elegant in its simplicity, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in the ponytail Marcus remembered. She clutched a small, wrapped gift and surveyed the crowd like someone trying to locate a familiar face. "Is that your Uber driver?" Sarah asked, following his gaze. "What's she doing here?" Jessica invited her. "They met at the hair salon yesterday morning." Sarah grinned at Marcus's confused expression. "My sister was getting her wedding day blowout, and Maya was there getting her hair done for a job interview. They started talking, and Jessica found out Maya was the one who drove you to the church." Marcus felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Jessica invited a stranger to her wedding? Maya's not a stranger anymore. Jessica spent 2 hours talking to her about everything. David, the wedding, you showing up unexpectedly. Maya apparently gave excellent advice about family dynamics and second chances. What kind of advice? The kind that convinced Jessica to add an extra seat to the family table. Sarah nodded toward the reception area where round tables displayed elegant place cards. "Right next to yours," Marcus blinked. "There's a place card for Maya?" "There's a place card for Maya. Jessica decided anyone wise enough to get you here in the first place deserved to stay for dinner." Across the room, Maya was being greeted by Jessica herself, who had broken away from her new husband to welcome the unexpected guest. The two women embraced like old friends, and Marcus could see Maya's nervousness dissolving into genuine warmth. "I should go say hello," Marcus found himself saying. "You should." Sarah touched his arm lightly. "And Marcus, try to remember that some of the best things in life happen by accident." Marcus made his way across the reception hall, weaving between clusters of guests and avoiding eye contact with relatives who might want to interrogate him about his 3-year absence from family events. As he approached Maya and Jessica, he caught fragments of their conversation. "The dress is absolutely stunning," Maya was saying. "You look like you stepped out of a magazine." "Thank you for coming," Jessica replied. "I know it was last minute, but I couldn't stop thinking about what you said at the salon. About how sometimes the universe puts people exactly where they need to be. I'm honored to be here. Though I have to admit, I'm a little overwhelmed. This is much fancier than anything I'm used to." "Fancy is overrated," Jessica laughed. "Wait until you meet David's college roommates. They're about to start a conga line." As if summoned by her words, a group of young men in loosened ties began organizing other guests into a line behind the band. Jessica shook her head in amused resignation. "Ladies," Marcus said, approaching the two women. Maya turned, her face lighting up with recognition. "Marcus, I was wondering if I'd see you again." "I hear I have you to thank for some very sage advice," he said, glancing at Jessica. Jessica's expression grew more serious. "Maya helped me realize that running away from difficult conversations doesn't make them disappear. Is that what I've been doing? Running away?" "We both have been," Jessica admitted. "The question is whether we want to keep running or try standing still for a while." Maya looked between them, clearly sensing the undercurrents of years-old conflict. "I should probably find my table and let you two talk." "Actually," Jessica said, "your table is the same as Marcus's." "Family table, right up front." Maya's eyes widened. "Oh, I couldn't possibly sit at the family table. You're the person who got Marcus here today," Jessica interrupted. "That makes you family as far as I'm concerned." Marcus found himself studying Maya with new appreciation. She'd driven him to the wedding as a simple business transaction, yet somehow she'd also become the catalyst for this tentative reconciliation. There was something almost mystical about the timing, the way separate lives had intersected at exactly the right moment. "Well," Maya said, I suppose if I'm family now, I should probably learn everyone's names. Jessica laughed, the sound carrying genuine joy. Come on, I'll introduce you to David's parents. They're the normal ones in this crowd. As Jessica led Maya toward another group of guests, she paused beside Marcus. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for wanting me here, he replied. I know that wasn't easy either. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. 3 years of hurt and misunderstanding hung between them, but so did decades of shared history and love that had survived everything else. Save me a dance later? Jessica asked. I'd like that. She squeezed his hand briefly, then continued across the room with Maya in tow. Marcus watched them go, marveling at how quickly Maya had been absorbed into the celebration. She moved through introductions with genuine interest, asked thoughtful questions, laughed at David's father's terrible jokes. Sarah appeared beside him again, holding a fresh glass of wine. How did that go? Better than expected. Less dramatic than feared. Jessica's good at that, making hard things look easy. Sarah sipped her wine, observing the reception flow around them. So what happens next? Marcus considered the question. For 3 years, he'd operated under the assumption that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, that some damage was too extensive to repair. But watching Jessica welcome Maya into their family circle, seeing the easy warmth between them, he wondered if he'd been wrong about what was possible. I guess I figure out how to be someone's cousin again, he said finally. It's like riding a bike, Sarah assured him. Except the bike costs more and everyone expects you to pay for dinner. Marcus laughed, surprising himself. I've missed you, Sarah Park. I've missed you too, Marcus Wellington. Now come on, let's go sit at our fancy family table and pretend we know how to use all these forks. As they walked toward the dining area, Marcus caught sight of Maya again. She was deep in conversation with David's grandmother, listening intently to what appeared to be a detailed story about the groom's childhood. Her presence at the family table no longer seemed unusual. It seemed inevitable, as if she'd always been meant to be part of this story. Maybe Sarah was right about the universe placing people where they needed to be. Maybe some encounters weren't accidents at all, but corrections to courses that had drifted too far off track. The dinner bell chimed softly, calling guests to their seats. Marcus straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and prepared to rejoin his family. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.